Jessica Tuchman Mathews is former president and distinguished fellow of the Carnegie Endowment for International Peace, a global network of policy research centers. She has made contributions across a wide spectrum of public and private institutions. After completing her PhD at Caltech in molecular biology, Dr. Mathews began her career as a Congressional Science Fellow of the American Association for the Advancement of Science. She then worked as a staff member of the Energy and Environment Subcommittee in the House and served as the National Issues Director for the 1976 presidential campaign of U.S. Representative Morris Udall. The following year, she joined the National Security Council as the Director for the Office of Global Issues, covering nuclear proliferation, conventional arms sales, chemical and biological warfare, and human rights. Dr. Mathews moved from government to the Fourth Estate in 1980, joining the editorial board of the Washington Post, where she covered issues including energy, the environment, science, technology, arms control, and health, returning to government service as Deputy to the Undersecretary of State for Global Affairs before joining the Council on Foreign Relations as a senior fellow and the director of the organization's Washington program until 1997. During her time there, she published an article in Foreign Affairs entitled Power Shift, heralding the relevance of non-state actors in security and foreign policy, which was chosen by the journal's editors as one of the most influential in the publication's 75 years. In 1997, Dr. Mathews was appointed president of the Carnegie Endowment for International Peace, leading the endowment for 18 years. Though she had spent many years thinking she would become a laboratory scientist upon graduating from Caltech, Dr. Mathews' future and policy issues was sealed once she entered the political realm. Science, however, has remained an integral part of her career of service in the executive and legislative branches of government, research in the nonprofit arena, and journalism. She recalls what initially attracted her to a science-based career, a departure from the profession and history modeled by her two-time Pulitzer Prize-winning mother, Barbara Tuchman, saying, "I think starting in high school, I felt as though science was the primary intellectual exercise. Science for me was the most exciting thing." We are grateful that she has translated that interest to the benefit of society.
Well, I want to thank you and all your team. I'm deeply honored by this. I'm also more than a little unsure of my worthiness to be recognized in this place and in this company. My career has been a nearly perfect example of the adage that life is what takes place while you're making other plans. I certainly never planned to leave the lab, to become a fallen away scientist. But when I finished here, as President Rosenbaum said, I had a wonderful opportunity to go serve for a year as a science advisor in Congress. I was in the first class of Congressional Science Fellows, a program that's still going on. And the 6 of us in that class doubled the number of people on Capitol Hill in the staff with advanced science degrees. And that is from a staff of 10,000. And this was at a time when it was estimated that over 30% of all the legislation that Congress was thinking about had a substantial technological component. Congress was debating, this is ancient history, but a whole raft of chemical spills. Some of you may remember Love Canal and others that followed. Whether to allow the supersonic transport, the SST, to land in the US, to fly, how to manage air and water pollution, how to manage a whole raft of food additives, nitrites, and most of all, what to do about nuclear energy, nuclear safety, nuclear waste. These were huge issues at the time. It was also, when I got there, finishing its 10th year of debate on how to manage strip mining of coal. And so this was the year that Congress, in order to deal with this tidal wave, created the Office of Technology Assessment to give itself some institutional capacity to deal with all these issues. So there was no shortage of great stuff to work on, but the professional congressional staff was something like 90% lawyers. And Mo Udall, my boss, who a great man, told me as we were interviewing that lawyers were the only true generalists. And I had only been in the job a few weeks when a very senior colleague, on hearing my background, told me, "You should go to law school and then you'd really have it made." So after 5 years in graduate school, you can imagine that the very last thing I wanted to do was to go back to school. And so I ignored this very frequently offered piece of advice. But I quickly discovered that conventional wisdom was completely wrong, because the lawyers and I spoke one common language, English, but I also spoke a second, and that was science. I could tell the difference between a percentage increase and an increase in percentage points. It's still an entertainment in reading the newspapers on that point. I knew basic, very basic statistics. I could quantify risk. I knew what the exciting revolution in biology that was creating the bioengineering revolution that was unfolding at that moment, what that was all about. And above all, I realized that I was comfortable in the presence of uncertainty, and that none of my lawyer friends were. And over time, I realized that lawyers are trained to eliminate uncertainty. You know, a defendant is either guilty or not guilty. It's not 92% plus or minus 0.3. And any lawyer who writes a contract or a will or any document that leaves uncertainty has failed. But science takes place at the boundary between the known and the unknown. So anybody who's working without uncertainty isn't doing science, or at least is doing very, very boring science. And this was kind of a revelation to me, because this profound difference between scientists and non-scientists accounts, I think, for so much of the the failures of communication between them, and for so much of the difficulty in making policy on complex technical issues. I've watched and participated in the debate about climate change for 2 decades, I'm sorry to say. And I could tell you that this vexing question of what uncertainty means is at the very core of it. But what I learned here, so much of what I value in what I know, and I absorbed in this great environment the sheer beauty of science and its essential integrity. And if I may, on that note, I'd like to leave you with one serious thought. For while the institution of American science itself is healthy, indeed, it's galloping forward in exciting ways on so many fronts. Outside the castle walls, the situation is ugly. The foundation is very wobbly. It's not sound. Reason is under attack. Facts are considered optional, a matter of opinion. Scientists are seen far too often as untrustworthy elites. pursuing their own interests, not truth. The reasons for this are many, and they go way beyond today. Partly, I think, the unexpected divisiveness of social media that confounds truth and falsehood and nuttiness all in one soup. There's also a rising wave of populism in our country that comes from generational disappointment in what government has provided, and also a fear of very rapid global change. And also we have a president who sets an example that lies are an acceptable everyday form of communication. Regardless of what you think of his policies, that is a truth. These causes and others are poisoning the soil that science needs to grow on. And so I hope that this great institution, which embodies the essence of science, will see the need and find a way to extend its reach and its influence to pushing back against this ugly trend. That it will do what it can to stop the substitution of emotion for facts, the promotion of unreason, the attacks on truth, and indeed on the very existence of proof as opposed to opinion. I hope all of us in this room are part of that effort. And if Caltech can help in what must be a crucial effort in the years ahead, then I believe that certainly its future will be as glittering and as great as its present and its past has been. Thank you.